On today's show, the Capitals pick up a big win over the Calgary Flames. And did the Capitals make a mistake by giving Logan Thompson such a long contract?
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And I want to thank all of you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the big win that the Capitals take down the Calgary Flames. A bounce back win on the road has been kind of the MO of the team. After they come off a big loss, they find a way to get back into the win column. That held true in the game tonight. This was a game that could have definitely got out of hand for the Capitals as they spent a lot of time in the penalty box. Tom Wilson, the physicality was really flaring up in the game. How did the Capitals find a way to pick up a big win in this game? I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll talk about Logan Thompson. And the initial take on him was it was a slam dunk. They get him to a long-term deal for a relatively cheap price. But why do some of the industry insiders say that the Capitals overpaid and gave him too long of a contract for what is perceived to be an unproven commodity? I'll talk about that. And then in the final segment, I'll talk about trade rumblings surrounding this team. But just to get it going here, talking about the Capitals' big win over the Calgary Flames. Was a big evening for Logan Thompson as he was playing in front of some of his family. I saw his father in attendance play. He was from the Calgary area. So a big win, and his first big win after his new contract. It had to feel pretty good. And, part of the job of this show is just to kind of have your finger on the pulse of the team. And what are some of the other insiders saying? What are some of the blog writers writing? And some people are saying, what kind of performance were we going to see out of Logan Thompson? Is he going to just kind of not be as engaged anymore because he got his big contract? And did the Capitals ultimately overpay for him? I'll talk about some of that a little bit later, but a big game for LT and the Capitals as they were coming off that loss to the Vancouver Canucks. And we knew it was going to be a tough game tonight as this Calgary Flames team is pretty good. I mean, they're not the best team in the NHL, but it was definitely a fierce competition. And it was a game that saw a lot of head games. There were a lot of chirpers. There was a lot of physicality. Tom Wilson did all he had to do to avoid getting into any physical altercations. And they would have loved nothing more than to bait him into a penalty or a fight that could have ultimately seen the Calgary Flames win this game. Too many breakaways. What needs to get cleaned up? Let's dive into the game tonight. At the end of the day, a thrilling 3-1 victory for the Capitals. And that's what we want. We want the team to accumulate as many points as they possibly can right now because they have the Carolina Hurricanes nipping at their heels. As I record this, the Capitals 73 points. The Carolina Hurricanes 66. So they need to have the foot squarely on the gas pedal, the pedal to the metal for the remainder of the season. And kind of my belief why I think they should favor going with LT on more of a regular basis, as you saw how huge he was in the game, going more for the sure thing than just the standard rotation that we've seen thus far. This win bumps the Caps' impressive record to 34-11-5, bringing their point total to 73, even better. It marks their 8th straight game along 2 goals or fewer. Talk about impressive, and a lot of that was due in large part to Logan Thompson. Make no mistake about it. Those were some 10 bell saves that I think a lot of other netminders would not have made. Now, even better, it marks their 8th straight game allowing 2 goals or fewer. And, that's not something that a lot of other teams can boast. A lot of teams struggle in the netminding department. So that thing alone, that fact alone, speaks volumes of this team. But there was a lot of tension on the ice. I'm talking about Tom Wilson and Rasmus Andersson, Adam Klapka, that this could have definitely spun out of control in a hurry. And I'm ultimately glad that the Capitals won, but I would have given up a goal just to see Tom Wilson get in a good fight with Rasmus Andersson. I have never witnessed anything kind of mocking Tom Wilson on the ice, as Tom Wilson was cross-checked earlier in the game, and Rasmus Andersson was mocking him openly during the play on the ice. Again, in my time watching the game, I have never witnessed. I mean, it was almost childish what I saw out on the ice, that it definitely tested the restraint of Tom Wilson. And I think to a certain extent, Wilson looked at it like, is this guy a clown out here? We saw several confrontations, but it really escalated in the third period. And why is that? That is a Calgary Flames team that is fighting for their future as well, as they are not a lock to make it to the playoffs. I mean, they're kind of in it right now, but they definitely want to make up ground, that if they could have made the most of the opportunity with having another guy in the penalty box, that potentially they could have scored another goal. Adam Klapka threw a cross check at Wilson, and then Andersson decided to mimic Wilson, like I talked about after the play. You could have cut the tension with a knife out on the ice. And what's funny, Tom Wilson, we know what he means to this team outside of the Capital circle. A lot of people like, when bad things happen to him. And, some of the Flames fans kind of took pleasure in the fact that he was getting kind of ribbed out there on the ice. But Logan Thompson in this game, he is definitely the saving grace. And that's my big takeaway from this game, is that Logan Thompson was worth every single penny. That there is going to be stability between the pipes for years to come. In front of his friends and family in Calgary, Thompson was on fire, making 31 saves on 33 shots. He allowed only 1 goal, credited to Coleman, while stopping 2 breakaway attempts. That is something that Spencer Carberry has spoke of all season. We need to cut back on the breakaways. Logan Thompson was huge, but we don't want to count on him too much to make all these saves, because at some point, he is fallible. He can be a bit leaky from time to time, not too often, but there's not a netminder that's going to stop a puck 100% of the time. We need to stop that. We need to eliminate that. Thompson's performance improves his season to an astonishing record of 23, 2-3, keeping him at the top of the league in both save percentage and goals against. You take a look at it, Hellebuck, the best, I would say, Logan Thompson, and then Shesterkin, in the next segment, I'll talk about what industry insiders are saying. But for me, as a guy that covers this team, I love this deal, and it's clear why he signed that 6-year contract. And like I talked about, there was a feeling of stability during the Holtby era. I think that, I'm feeling that a lot again here with Logan Thompson. And it's interesting, there was a meme, I guess you could say, that put a side-by-side picture of Logan Thompson and Braden Holtby, and it is remarkable how similar that they look to each other. But great for LT, as he was huge, and the saving grace. I'm going to go ahead and say it. If Charlie was in there, a great netminder, they may have lost this game. But let's dig into the scoring. How did the Capitals get into the win column here? Pierre-Luc Dubois kicked things off with his 10th goal of the season just 2 minutes into the first period. PLD, huge for the Capitals. That second line humming along, and ultimately has been the secret sauce for the Capitals this year. Pierre-Luc Dubois in particular, earlier in the season, he was getting assists. Now we're seeing him contribute more and more in the goal scoring department. Huge for the Capitals. And Aliaksei Protas, speaking of the second line, players that play on the second line, extending his point streak to 5 games and scoring his 21st goal of the season. Quite stunning. Aliaksei Protas growing by leaps and bounds, and Dylan Strome getting off the schneid, scoring his 13th goal of the season on the PP. So a huge night for the Capitals. Despite going 1 for 4 on the power play, the Capitals still crushed it, earning their 7th win in the last 8 games. It is a thrilling time to be a Capitals fan, and the momentum is building. Can you feel the excitement surrounding this team? Again, defying odds. That's my biggest thing. My biggest takeaway of this season is defying odds. If I could put a title for the 2024-2025 Caps, it is defying odds. That is ultimately what they've done, and I'm happy to be along for the ride. All right, so coming up here after the break, I am drinking the Kool-Aid on Logan Thompson. I love what he brings to this team, but some experts, some insiders have questioned it. What are their thoughts on LT? I'll discuss straight ahead. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. And listen, my team's not in the playoffs anymore. Your team's not in the playoffs anymore. But if you want to have vested interest in the Super Bowl, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, it got that much more exciting. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this next segment here, we're going to talk about Logan Thompson, the man himself, coming off a big contract extension. And I'm loving it. And the Capitals followed through with what they said they were going to do. They wanted to get a deal done with LT before the Four Nations face off. Well, mission accomplished as they did that. But the fallout and what has followed the day after is various podcasts, insiders questioning the judgment of the Capitals. Did they pay too much for Logan Thompson, considering that we've seen him in only a relatively small sample size? And would it have been a better idea to give Charlie Lindgren the bigger deal, as we've seen a larger sample size of him? That is the questions that are swirling around with some of the people that know the sport the best. I think I know the team pretty darn well as a guy that does a podcast and watches all the games. I like the move, but let's dig into the other side of the coin, if you will. You know my side of the coin. I love it. Stability. They got him on the cheap for the long term, but let's flip over the coin a little bit here. That's what we're going to do. Dive into the future net for the Capitals as they locked up their starting goalie Logan Thompson with a hefty 6-year, $35.1 million contract. Hefty, relatively speaking. I'm going to go ahead and say fairly inexpensive, but hefty at $35.1 million. I can see that. You take a look at that, and the significance to the team since he has joined has been a stability in net for the Capitals. But the question therein is, you take a look around the league and you've seen some of the other players and the netminders that have, signed these bigger deals. I'm looking at you, Igor Shesterkin. Is it the right idea? And how is this contract going to look 3, 4, 5 years from now? Are we going to look back on it positively, Or are we going to look at it back as something that has aged like a carton of milk? Now, while both the Caps and Thompson are celebrating this agreement, it does bring up some important questions about the long-term effects of such contracts for goalies in the NHL. And what does it ultimately mean for Charlie Lindgren? I mean, listen, the Capitals just got done paying Logan Thompson a substantial amount of money that unless Charlie Lindgren is willing to accept a minimum increase or take quite a haircut, I think his future with the team is a bit uncertain. Why wouldn't he go out and test the open market? It is an interesting time between the pipes. Now, Thompson has only made 121 career starts in the NHL with a goals against average of .255. Now, he's signing this deal after looking promising in his outings, but the scrutiny and what I've heard here is it's not so much about his personal performance. It raises an entire discussion about the unpredictability of goaltending investments league-wide. And I will dig into some players in particular that I'm talking about here straight ahead. But let's face it, goaltending can be incredibly volatile and hard to predict. Shesterkin looked like a slam dunk, like sign him up long-term that we've seen him flail a little bit this year. Teams struggle to find talent who can become dependable, which is why it's so hard to pick a netminder that you want to name your number one netminder, and why very few are picked as first-round picks in the NHL draft. You take a look at it, evaluating a goalie's performance is a bit difficult, that it doesn't always translate, that if you see them have success in the lower levels, AHL, ECHL, sometimes it doesn't always translate to the NHL. Now, outside, a handful of elite goalies, many teams take a gamble on their investments only to see those bets not pay off. It's a risk. Everything in life is a risk, but you take a look at a guy like Logan Thompson, just speaking here personally, they ran a bigger risk of him leaving or overpaying for him the closer it got to the free market. But this is the chatter, and some of the netminders that they're talking about here is Tristan Jarry from the Pens. He's currently playing in the AHL. The starting netminder for the Pens for this year is playing with their AHL affiliate, demonstrating the risks that come with these type of contracts. And then there's also Mackenzie Blackwood of the Avalanche, who recently signed a hefty 5-year extension despite a career goals against average of 3.01. Now, you take a look at it, that's quite a leap and is influenced largely by performances since joining Colorado. And if you ask me, Colorado was desperate for any kind of stability in net. I guess you could file this under thirsty, if you will, that the Colorado Avalanche were thirsty for a good netminder, as they've had gone out with a couple bad dates, bad netminders, if you will, and all of a sudden the date of their dream or their netminder of their dream came in and they said, I want to put a ring on that. And ultimately that is what the Avalanche did. Now, let's not also forget about Ville Husso, who signed a $5 million contract back in 2022 after some impressive starts. He's now working his way back from the AHL, looking for another shot in the NHL. So there is some questions, and it's hard to pick the sure thing because sometimes the sure thing isn't the sure thing. But for me, I think the Capitals did the right thing, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Capitals manage this long-term commitment over 6 years. Are we going to look back on this as a masterclass by new GM Chris Patrick, or are we going to say, you overpaid, you gave him too much term? I guess time will only tell. Again, my initial take on it is I love it. What I have seen tonight, what I have seen this year lends me to believe that it was the right decision. And you'll never know. They could have given Charlie Lindgren the long-term deal. We don't know. That sometimes players are good and they fizzle out. It's not just in net mining, but it seems to be predominantly in the net mining department that sometimes the players that seem good on paper aren't good in the long term. In actuality, it's a risk at the end of the day, and a risk I think the Capitals were worth taking. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about other trade rumblings. This time I'm talking about Tanev. Would he be a good fit for the Capitals? I'll discuss Straight ahead. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together, and I love it. I've attended some of these NFL games, and if I have the opportunity to get the seats, it is a must do thing in your life. If you can get a chance to get great seats to a great NFL game or a great concert, I think you're going to be able to do it with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. And there's a lot of difficulty in finding tickets. There's a lot of options. That is why I like Game Time. They take the guesswork out of it. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And that's the hard part. What is the view of the field going to be? What is the view of the playing surface going to be? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day, the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. All right, in this next segment here, we're going to talk about players or a player in particular that the Capitals might be interested in as they are making their push for the playoffs. Again, there's still quite a bit of hockey. But the Capitals are reigning supreme right now, top of the class in the NHL with the Winnipeg Jets, that maybe it is time to bolster their lineup. You see what other Metro Division teams, or more specifically, what the Carolina Hurricanes have done. Is it time for the Capitals to restock the cupboard? So some of the names that I've talked about before is Brock Nelson from the Islanders and Yanni Gourde from the Kraken. Those names are being tossed around. Rentals at the end of the day. Not loving it, but if the Capitals are in the position to be all in, and it is my feeling that the Capitals need to be all in, is you take a look at it, Alex Ovechkin is here this year, next year, and then it's going to be a whole lot different. That if we want to win another cup with Alex Ovechkin on the lineup, we need to make some additions. And one other name that's being circulated is Brandon Tanev, and this was put out by the Fourth Period. They were speculating. Now, Tanev is known for his impressive speed, physical play, and relentless forechecking. He's definitely a player that could add depth to the Capitals lineup. Also well known for odd photos, headshots, something of that nature. If you have seen him, he's well known for that. Since being selected by the Pens in 2021, Tanev has made a name for himself in Seattle. A kind of unremarkable team, a team that I think thought that they were going to follow in the steps of the Golden Knights. Has not been the case. Last season, he had a great season, racking up a career 16 goals. So where would I see him on the Capitals as a third line player? Again, the third line, circle it, blink, 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 the biggest deficiency out on the ice. Now, why would the Kraken entertain this, as they have struggled, currently struggling, trailing the Calgary Flames by 8 points for the second wild card spot in the Western Conference? Not out of it, but I think that they are looking to their future as well. If I was going to guess, I would say that they're most likely interested in some of our younger talent, prospects, something of that nature. Into that, I would say tread carefully. With a record of 22 wins, 25 losses, and 3 OT losses, they're sitting 6th in the Pacific and 27th overall in the league. So a tough spot for that Seattle team, trying to mix things up a little bit. And according to Chris Johnston, From The Athletic, there's chatter that Tanev might be on the move if the Kraken can turn things around. Currently, he's set to become an unrestricted free agent after this season. As you know, the Capitals have some UFAs that they need to take care of as well. And with 15 points from 48 games this year, including 8 goals and 7 assists. So you take a look at it, he would be a rental for a guy like Tanev. I'm not going to give up a whole lot. I just really am not going to do it. He is not the game changer that, say, the Carolina Hurricanes did. If they could orchestrate some kind of deal and they didn't have to mortgage the farm, then yeah, I guess I would be okay with it. But again, I would tread carefully. And as a bit of a kicker here, Tanev has the added bonus of playoff experience along with a manageable $3.5 million cap hit. And he comes with a 10-team no trade list. So there are names that are being circulated, and I do expect the Capitals to be active to an extent. I don't expect them to be overly active because if you take a look at the roster that they have assembled, I don't think there's a whole lot that needs to be changed. However, they need to restock the cupboard a little bit. If this team's depth was put to test, how would they weather the storm? I've talked about how big PLD has played. Aliaksei Protas. Well, imagine if one of them or something strange happened and both of them got injured. That could definitely change the outlook of the season because we've taken a look at the depth that's down in Hershey, Miroshnichenko, LaPierre, these different guys. Ethan Frank is the kind of the shining star of the bunch. That there is, Miro, Hendricks LaPierre, Vrana. These guys are not going to be the guys that you're going to plug in and expect to see the same kind of performance that you've seen out of Protas, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Dylan Strome, etc. You know what I'm talking about. So they are going to have to come to terms and start drilling down on the players that would like to acquire. And just looking at the players that are available as expected, most of them are rentals. And you take a look at that Rantanen deal with the Hurricanes. I would not expect for him to play with the Hurricanes after this season. That is a bit of desperation, a lot of desperation for the Carolina Hurricanes to get some sort of results. They are coming after the Capitals. They are coming after the top of the Metro. That's the kind of moves they're making. I would expect something similar by the Capitals if they want to remain competitive and also be well prepared for whatever will be thrown their way. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.